My name is Samantha. I'm 20 years old and I work at a Walmart near a small town called Jackson, Alabama. Since I don't go to school full-time, my boss would often put me on an overnight shift back when the store was open 24 hours a day. Since it was a supercenter, there would still be a number of employees working my shift. This particular night was from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. I was one of only a few employees doing stock work. There were 1 or 2 people at the front registers. Since our store is located in rural Alabama, we didn't really get much business at those crazy hours. However, it was a prime time for restocking. I didn't know the other employees working that night personally, but it's not like we'd run into each other in the huge store anyway. I started my night folding pants in the men's department and generally tidying up. I kept my headphones on at night because usually no one would tell me to take them off. The customer came into the jeans department and it was about 11:30 at that time. So it wasn't really weird. People were still coming in and buying clothes until usually around midnight. The customer came up to me and asked if we had more of the specific pants he found in a different waist size. I apologized and told him just what was on the rack. He thanked me and left. I accidentally made eye contact with him as he stood by the rack and put the jeans back on. It was kind of awkward. He walked away and I went about my business. Some time passed and the store began to look like a ghost town. No one around as far as the eye could see. I think it was about 1 a.m. I'd made my way over to the electronics department. I was going back and forth with boxes from the back section where we kept all the items that were not going out. I took a cart full of boxes to one of the aisles and started stocking the shelves. Because the shelves were empty, I could see someone in the next aisle watching me. Well, only until he noticed that I noticed him. Then he looked away, but his eyes looked really familiar. I moved closer to get a better look, and I realized it was the same customer from about 2 hours before. How in the world could he still be in the store without making it obvious? I took the cart with me and walked over to the next aisle just to see if the man had any items in his hands. His hands were completely empty. There was no way he could have been shopping for 2 hours and not picked up a single thing. Something wasn't right. I quickly restocked the shelf with coffee makers and other appliances, then took the empty cart to the back. I chilled in there for a while because, frankly, I had a feeling this guy might have been following or watching me for longer than I realized. I played on my phone for a while in the employee lounge. Then, when I figured it was time to get back to work, I decided to do some grocery work instead, just to be in a different part of the store. I went into the dairy cooler and filled a bunch of cases with dairy products like milk and yogurt. This took a lot of time because I had to check the dates on the products and such. Over the loud noise of the giant refrigerators keeping the cooler cold, I heard the door to the dairy cooler burst open. There was conveniently a gap in the crates sitting on one of the pallets that allowed me to peer through it to the door of the cooler. And it was the same customer. I ran for cover under one of the shelves and pushed a big box of eggs in front of me. I didn't have to worry about making any noise because the refrigerators were so loud. Or anyone wondering why I decided to hide. Well, I already assumed that this guy was hanging around the store watching me. When I saw him in the employee-only area, no matter how that walking into the milk cooler, it seemed like something bad was about to happen. For the longest time, I hid behind this box with my head down, expecting to hear the cooler doors open and close. Finally, after a while of hiding and not looking, I assumed that maybe he had left after looking for me. I lifted my head from my arms for the first time, looked up at the box, and screamed. There he was, smiling at me, standing over the box. But his smile disappeared as soon as I started screaming. He tried to put his hand on my lips to muffle my scream, but I wouldn't let him. I pushed the box of eggs right into him, and the eggs falling to the floor caused him to step back and look down at his shoes. I ran right past him, but he didn't grab me. So I kept running until I found another warehouse worker and told him to help me. The worker's name was Bob, I remember from his name tag. Suddenly, the man from the milk cooler came up to the two of us and apologized, explaining that he was from the company and was there to make sure everything was running smoothly. He said he didn't mean to scare me and was just checking up on me in the milk cooler to make sure I wasn't slacking off. This Bob guy seemed to believe it all, but then again, he didn't seem very smart. I asked the man why he put his hand over my mouth, and he said he was trying to avoid making a scene. Then, shockingly, he gave me the order to finish the appliance section and disappeared. As he ran down the aisle, I called out, "What's your name?" And he called back, "Tom." And just like that, he was gone. The next day, I called one of the managers and asked if there was supposed to be a visit from the company the night before, and if a creepy man named Tom sounded familiar. My manager, Margaret, said it sounded like a complete decade. There was no record of anyone from corporate named Tom coming to visit, nor would anyone from corporate ever be in the store at 2 a.m. They then went ahead and checked the camera footage, and a police report was filed when they realized it was a random man. The cameras proved that this man had been following me between the aisles for most of the first few hours of my shift. I happened to grab the last one off the shelf, which was advertised as a really good Black Friday deal. As I grabbed it, however, a tall, disgusting, dirty-looking guy came up to me and insisted that he really needed a laptop. I nervously said, "Sorry, it's the last one." Then he got mad at me and started making a scene. The man was clearly not normal, and my heart began to race, simply because I'm not often put on guard in situations like this. As others looked on at the commotion this big guy was making, I quickly walked away with the laptop box and went straight to a line. He kept yelling at me as I walked away. It was unbelievable. Some of the other customers in line even tried to laugh with me and make me feel better, saying the guy was a nut. So I get home. My family is all asleep. I go outside to sit in the backyard by the pool and set up my new laptop. Then the light on the side of the house went on, the one that goes on with movement. I checked the side of the house to make sure no one was there. Would that thing go off once in a while? Yes, but there's a small patch of woods right next to the house, so animals would often run onto the property and set it off. Anyway, I'm kind of a big wait, so I went inside, locked the door, and finished setting up my laptop in the living room. Suddenly, a car alarm went off outside. I recognized it as my Cadillac. I looked out the window to confirm. I ran upstairs to get my keys, then tried to press the panic button to turn off the alarm. It didn't work from inside, so I went out to the porch and turned it off. But then I noticed a car parked in front of our house that wasn't there when I came home earlier. Any car parked on the street on our block was suspicious enough. We live in a gated community and everyone has huge driveways. I stepped off the stoop and noticed that someone was sitting in the car. I went back into the house and locked the door. I went to my mom's room and told her that I thought someone outside was trying to hurt us. My mom and dad have a complicated situation, so my dad doesn't always live with us. It would have been different if my dad had been there to tell me about it. My mom came downstairs with me, obviously worried because of what I told her. My mom looked through the peephole in the front door, then gasped and put her hands over her mouth. I looked through the peephole too, and felt ready to throw up when I saw a huge man standing on our stoop on the other side of the door. I whispered to my mom, "I think that man followed me from Walmart." Suddenly, the doorknob began to turn as the man tried to open the door. When that didn't work, he started banging on the door. That's when my mother started to gasp and cry, and my younger sister came out of her room and also started to panic when she realized what was happening. The pounding stopped. Then there was silence for a while, except for my mom's voice on the phone with the police. A few minutes passed, my mom was still on the phone with the police, and there was a loud bang and crash downstairs in the den. A window was shattered. My mom and sister were both screaming and crying. I told them to run upstairs while I locked the door to the den. I waited down there, expecting an attempt at the door or a bang. Surprisingly, nothing. I heard a police car outside my house, its siren blaring briefly. It was the fastest response time I'd ever heard of. I ran outside to lead them to the cave where the broken glass was. There they found the huge, dirty, crazy-looking man hiding behind one of our couches. He was immediately arrested and we pressed charges. All the while, he was screaming profanities and threats at me, not helping his case. Both cops told me the guy seemed unstable and on some kind of drugs, but told us to get a good night's sleep because he wouldn't bother us again. So while it may be fun to people watch at Walmart and laugh at some of the silly things you see, realize that you may also find some of the more dangerous people in our society at your local Walmart. Working the night shift at Walmart as a night stock clerk on the weekends was my second job when I finished college. I needed to pay off my loans, so I needed to make money any way I could. I didn't deal with customers or anything like that. I just signed for overnight deliveries, did warehouse work, and stocked shelves in the store during off hours. The typical shift is usually either 11 to 7 or a 12 to 7. On July 9th, 2015, a Thursday night, I still haven't gotten my head around it. I was in the middle of my shift in the electronics department when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone walk past the aisle I was working in. Normally, this wouldn't have caught my attention, except for the fact that there were only 2 other workers in the building with me that night, Alvin and Baco. They were both wearing the same staff shirts that I was wearing. I would know because we all clocked in at the same time. The person I saw out of the corner of my eye was wearing all black, so naturally I walked to the end of the aisle and took a peek around the shelf. No one was there. I called out both Alvin and Baco's names, and when they didn't answer, it got even weirder. But I went back to work anyway. I held in a pee for a while and told myself I'd go when I was done working in that hallway. Seconds later, there was a huge crash a few aisles down. It actually startled me. I ran over to see what it was, and a bike had somehow been knocked off its hook. The hook was still good and in place. It looked like someone had gone to a lot of trouble to knock it down. I hung it back up and started walking the aisles, suspicious as hell. I got to the last aisle in the back of the store, which was the paper and cleaning aisle. Then there was this crazy sound that I could best describe as a laugh. It sounded like it was literally coming from the next aisle. So again, I made a short run back to that aisle and felt my heart drop as I saw a man dressed all in black, waiting at the end of the aisle with his back to me. But his head turned so that I could only see half of his face. Then he suddenly ran not toward me, but down another aisle. I heard the sound of his footsteps. I had the choice of running after him or going to find my 2 coworkers, and I chose the latter. All the while, I heard these weird laughing sounds and footsteps that I honestly felt were circling me. I found Alvin in the women's department and told him to keep an eye out for someone who wasn't supposed to be in the building, dressed all in black. We didn't have walkie-talkies, so I asked him to tell Baco if he saw him. I excused myself because I couldn't hold it any longer. I had to go to the bathroom. I ran to the staff bathroom, which was in the storage area. I put a nest of toilet paper on the seat in one of the stalls and sat down. And yes, I'm the kind of person who sits down when I pee. The bathroom door opened and closed. Of course, with 3 to 4 people in the building, I said, "Who is that?" And with no answer, I assumed the worst. I heard that horrible laugh again, and someone stepped into view through the crack in the door, looking right in. They came closer until the crack was completely covered, and all I could see of their face was one eye. Then the whispering began. Unintelligible whispering, but the echo from the bathroom only made it more disturbing. I just remembered that I had Alvin's phone number on my cell phone, so I pulled it out and called him right away. I spoke very loudly and told Alvin to come to the bathroom right away and help me. I stayed on the line with him and watched as the man on the other side of the stall walked once more and then ran out of the bathroom. I told Alvin to hurry, and 20 to 30 seconds later, Alvin came into the bathroom. He said he didn't see anyone on his way in. We didn't have security working when the store was closed, so we couldn't even look at the cameras. I stayed with Alvin the rest of the night, helping out in whatever areas he was working, because there is safety in numbers. I texted my boss that night, and when I woke up at 3 p.m. the next day, I read his reply. He said that all the camera screens were showing static footage from the night before. No one had turned them off that he knew of. I got chills reading his text. He believed my story and assumed it had something to do with the cameras, but without video proof of the break-in or trespassing, I don't think there was anything he could do. It was all above my pay grade, though. That was the only night shift I've ever had where something really unexplainable happened.